if you could hear a gunshot and determine what caliber it was and who fired it, more power to you.
Right.
Because
so the first shot was fired here by the chair, though.
right,
And what was fired from down there?
nothing was fired from down there other than the fact that people saying they heard the first shot.
From
The
down
first
there.
5 shots total were fired from that doorway, the doorway just beyond that folding chair.
And
Cable Testament, who was the mayor.
I was going to say, that's where they were inside that room,
Sid
right?
Hatfield was inside, but Cable Testament was standing outside the door. Albert Phelps and C.V. Cunningham, 2 detectives, were standing on the other side of the door. Sid Hatfield pulled a .44, goes bang, and dropped the mayor. Then Albert Phelps, who was a left-handed detective but wore his gun on the right side, reached across to get his gun. Sid Hatfield put a round in the rib cage and then a round in the shoulder and dropped him to his knees, didn't kill him. C.B. Cunningham standing next to him, he did the same thing to C.B. Cunningham and dropped him to his knees. Now, Reese Chambers, who was the father of Ed Chambers, who owned the furniture store, down there, you see where that pallet's leaned up against the wall down there?
Yes, sir, right where that building bends.
There used to be about a 2 foot wide, let me make sure this thing doesn't fall down. Damn it. There used to be about a 2 foot wide passage that ran from here all the way to the street. Reese Chambers came running out of that passageway with a rifle, saw 2 detectives on their knees, and he said, bang, bang, blew their brains out. There were 6 detectives sitting over here alongside the railroad tracks. One of them jumped up when the shooting started and said, I'm getting out of here. So he swam the Tug River. 3 more says, I'm getting out of here. There used to be a road where this green grass is, and they went hustling down that road. And at that time, the houses were built up off the ground for cooling in the summertime. The 3 detectives went under that house, and the miners were right on their ass. And all of a sudden, this little old grandma, white hair, steps out with a number 10 frying pan and says, gentlemen, there's been enough killing going on around here today. There ain't gonna be no more. And they said, boop, back across the tracks. There was 1 detective who'd been shot in the back from up above over there.
Up on these buildings?
Yeah. And he ran across to that green and white house and plopped himself down in the chair. There was a wicker chair on the front porch. And he told the lady who ran the boarding house, Mary Duty, I've been hurt, go get a doctor. Well, the only doctor we had was the veterinarian dentist. So she came across here, says, I got a wounded man across the street. Took him back across the street. By the time they got back there, the wicker chair that he'd been sitting in was empty, but it had 6 more bullet holes in it. They found him up by that blue house, deep in the grass, with a total of 7 bullet holes in the back. Now, that accounts for 7 of the detectives. Well, the other one, that leaves 1 here. He ran inside the post office. Sid Hatfield, coming out of the furniture store, saw him run in there, reloaded his revolver, walked into the post office and said, Lee, come out and fight like a man. And Lee says, hell no. So Sid leaned over the counter and emptied a .44 caliber revolver into a pile of mail bags. That takes care of all but 2 of the people who were actually killed here. One was killed over there by that telephone pole with the 3 boxes on it. He'd just been fired that day from the mine. He was 52 years old, worked in the mines all his life, mentioned a union one time, and that was, for the mine boss, that was one time too many. He had turned around to say something to the man behind him. One of the miners up on top of the building saw a movement. Bang! I got him. Oh, he's one of ours. That particular miner happened to be my 4th cousin.
The one that shot him or the one that died?
The one that got shot. The other miner that got shot was a 16-year-old boy who had never had a new pair of shoes. Came to town to buy a new pair of shoes. Got right about here where the asphalt and gravel meet. Somebody saw movement up there. Bang! I got him. Oh, he's one of ours. He was buried in that new pair of shoes.
Now, is all that in this book?
Yes. I made sure it was in the Bloody Mingo book.
Well, I'm looking at the bullet holes. I mean, the bullets that are up here.
Right, and you're looking at the angle that they're coming in.
Yep.
Well,
now these are a little slightly different from these.
Well, you got to remember that miners were hiding up in the brush across the way.
On up on the mountain too?
Yeah, because that holler going up there is what they call Warm Hollow, which had the one of the Stone Mountain coal mines in it, which is what these miners were fighting over, was joining the union as a member of the Stone Mountain coal, which the owners didn't want them to do, because if they did, it would mean higher wages, better living conditions.
Right.
And where does that money come from?
Yeah.
The owner's pocket.
Yeah.
And so in their contract that they had signed when they went to work for the mines, there were 3 statements in there. 1 was you won't join the union. 2, you won't talk to anyone who's a member of the union. And 3, you won't talk among yourselves about the union. If we catch you doing any one of those 3, we're going to give you a 6-week cooling off period. At the end of that 6 weeks, if you're still talking about the union, you lose your job, you lose your house, you lose your access to the company store, you lose your access to the company hospital. If you've got children, they can't go to my company school. You can't take your family to my company church on Sunday, which is mandatory, because I have an employee standing there taking names of who walks in the door.
Yeah.
And come Monday morning, if your name's not on that list, I'm going to want to know why. And don't give me this garbage about, well, I had to go visit my sick sister.
Yeah.
Guess what? You can go visit your sick sister a couple days later when she's pushing up daisies.
And the hospital that we saw here, what do you have any idea when it was built? It was after.
It was built in built about 1922 and lasted till about 1926.
Yeah.
Down the way.
Yeah.
But it was nothing more than just a Band-Aid hospital.
Yeah.
You know, if you cut your finger, they'd put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
If you cut your finger off, they'd send you to the nearest hospital, which was 52 miles away. The doctor lived across the street, and he was nothing more than a witch doctor, you know. Well, I'll pray over your finger, and we'll see if we can attach it.
Yeah, those bullets looked like they were coming from over that way.
That big white house up there on the hill,
Yeah.
that was the mine boss's house.
Oh, okay.
for Stone Mountain Coal Camp.
Which was up this hollow.
Yep.
Okay. I guess somebody's living in it now. It looks pretty well kept.
Right. Now, if you see those two state markers between us and that blue house?
Yes, sir.
One of those states that's where Devil Anse was living when his brother Ellison was stabbed at the election day stabbing in 1882.
He was living in that house up?
No, he's living on a small house that used to sit right on the corner there.
Oh, okay. Not where that little building is, but on the other side of it?
Where the two state markers are.
Oh, okay.
But Devil Anse had gone across the Tug Fork to Kentucky to get his brother, because his brother had been stabbed 26 times and shot in the back by the three McCoy boys over the payment of a $10 fiddle. And he told the three McCoy boys and Sarah McCoy, their mother, if my brother Ellison lives, you'll get your boys brought back to Kentucky and you'll get them brought back to your house. If my brother dies, your boys will come back to Kentucky and you will get them back. The only problem was he didn't tell them that if my brother dies, your three boys are going to die. And it is rumored, of course no one was there in 1882, that there were over 50 different rounds fired at the top of their heads. Basically just blew their brains right off the top of their heads.
And kept shooting.
And then they were taken the 4 miles up the road and put on the front porch.
So the McCoys lived about 4 miles from here?
The Randall McCoy cabin was 4.9 miles from here.
See, I didn't realize it was that close, did you?
99% of what happened during the Hatfield-McCoy feud happened within 9 miles of where you're, a 9-mile radius of where you're standing right now. The only real major event that happened outside of that 9-mile radius is one when Cotton Mounts, who was a illegitimate nephew of Devil Anse, was hung in downtown Pikeville for killing Alifair McCoy, Randall McCoy's daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen their graves. Well, you haven't. I have. Him and his wife's and his daughter that got pregnant and then the baby died by...
well, the baby is up on the back of, up behind the Hatfield home down the road, which is about 5 miles and off on the other side of the river. Because Randall McCoy, once he found out that she'd become pregnant by Josie Hatfield, he says, "You'll never live under my roof again." Well, guess what? Randall McCoy moved in with Perry Klein, who was the family attorney.
Right.
And guess who moved in shortly after? Randall McCoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard or read and heard a good bit about Mr. Klein, shall we say.
Well, he got shot because some guy was messing around with his wife, and Perry confronted him in the streets, and the guy shot him in the knee, and gangrene set in and killed him.
Yeah. He was quite involved in the Randall McCoy side of things, though, right?
Yes, but he was also involved in the Sid Hatfield side of things.
Oh, okay.
The 5,000 acres that Randall McCoy claims that Devil Anse Hatfield stole from him was actually traded by Perry Klein to Sid Hatfield because they both of them wanted the opposite side of the river because that was more of their homestead.
Okay.
So they just gentleman's agreement traded 5,000 acres. And Randall McCoy just could not stomach that.
Now, Randall and Devil Anse were both in the Civil War together, right? Were they in the
Yes.
same company?
Yes.
Okay, and now I just caught a glimpse of one of the movies. I don't know which one it was, but that Devil Anse was leaving. Is that true?
Devil Anse came home
Right.
to protect his wife and children
Okay.
because then, you know, you just couldn't tell your commanding officer, I'm going home, I got corn crops to plant.
Right.
So he just took off.
Right.
And the thing of it was that Randall McCoy's brother, Asa Harmon McCoy, fought for the North down here in Pikeville and was wounded and came home to McCarr, which is just across the road. And Bad Jim Vance, who was Devil Anse's brother-in-law, didn't like the fact that he'd fought for the North, so he went across and shot him. But that was in February of 1865, which the Civil War was still going on, so you can't claim it was a feud killing.
Yeah. And that was, you say, just across the river
Yeah.
from here? Huh. That's a lot I didn't know.
I lived on the Tug River, along and fished the Tug River when I was a young man.
Yeah.
So I got old enough when I left home, I was 17 months old, and I'd still come back and fish the Tug River for them to catch.
Oh yeah, there's some good catfish in there.
I love to catch them big ones that weigh
Yeah.
up there 65 pounds or better.
Right. There's some in there, it's just a matter of figuring out where they're at.
Yeah.
But you gotta remember, in 1920,
Yeah.
the railroad tracks were the only way in and out of town. There was no road.
Yeah.
Anything you wanted brought into town, you loaded it on the train in either Bluefield or Williamson and had it brought in on the train.
That's what I was thinking about, where you was telling me where the house was right there where those two markers are. It's right up next to the road, but it's a good enough distance from the
At that
railroad.
time, there was no road.
That's what I was thinking, very possibly. If it was dirt.
There was no road along there till 1959, when Norfolk Western eventually tore down the old Norfolk Western train depot.
And
Well,
the old
these people
depot.
Sure, they had to come that way.
Yep. But
And
you
these
figure,
sure had to come that way.
yep.
So,
And there were two bullet holes in the far windows on this end that came from directly across the way.
Well, it sure has been good talking to you, buddy.
No problem.
and what's your name again?
Jim Baldwin.
Jim Baldwin, Mr. Baldwin.
You better take care of yourself now, buddy.
Yeah.